For our next project, we're going to work on a maze game. I'm just going to show you a real basic start to this, but there's a lot you can add to it, and I hope you'll spend a lot of time adding a lot of levels and doing some cool things with it. We'll keep the cat as our main character that we'll control, but we need some kind of maze for the cat to walk through in the background. So I'm going to click on the stage and go to the backdrop area. And again, I can paint here in the backdrop area. Notice I've actually stretched my screen out a little bit from side to side so this all fits in. Otherwise it shows little scroll bars here, and that can be a little bit hard to work with. I want the background to be all one color because we're going to check for touching that color to make sure we can't go through the walls. So the first thing I'm going to do is just fill the entire backdrop with something like black. Now I'm going to add in some path for the cat to go through. I need a pen, and I'm going to pick a white color and try to make the line pretty fat so I can make the path pretty easily. So I should be able to draw some kind of maze pretty quickly. Let's make them as fat as we can get. Okay, that's easier to work with. You're going to want some kind of start area, like here, and some kind of end, maybe up towards the corner, and a few dead ends. We can put some traps, things like that. So this is not a very exciting maze. You can do a lot more with that big area here that hide some stuff in. And that seems fine. Just get the idea. Okay. Now I'm going to go back to the cat and start programming the cat to run the maze. Now notice the cat doesn't actually move and fit through any of these areas. We need to shrink the cat down quite a bit so that we have some chance of making this work. So go to the shrink area, and I am kind of tiny. Now, I would like to be able to control the cat using the arrow keys. So the up arrow moves it up, down arrow moves it down, left and right, and so on. To do this, we want to handle keyboard events. So I'm going to take when the space bar is pressed and change that to right arrow. So I'm going to make it go to the right first. Under motion, I just have him move 10 steps. And now when I move the right arrow, he moves. Let's add in the other keys, and then we'll figure out how to stop him from going through the walls. I'm going to right-click on this and say duplicate. So rather than having to go find those two blocks again, I can just duplicate it and then change this to left arrow. Now one thing here is that we have to figure out how to make him go the other direction for right arrow. So right arrow makes the cat go to the right, and right now the left arrow also makes it go to the right. One thing I can do is to make sure I point in the direction I want to go each time before I move. So for the left arrow, I'm going to point to the left, and for the right arrow, I'm going to point to the right. Okay, let me duplicate this for the up and down. So when we go up, I want to point myself up, and when I go down, I want to point myself down. So I chose it by the words right, left, up, down, and of course it gives you a degree number as well that means the same thing. So you can keep track of it that way. Alright, now when I use the arrow keys, if I hit right, I go right. If I hit left, I go left. Up, I go up. Down, I go down. So that's pretty good. I don't really like how the cat goes upside down and stuff like this. So again, you can change that by hitting the eye here and changing the rotation style so that he just goes, well, I'll let him go back and forth, basically face left or right, but I won't let him turn upside down. I want to go back to the normal cat view. So now I go right, left, up, and down. That looks a little more natural to me. Now the cat still goes through the walls. Fortunately, we can tell if we're touching the wall and do something about it. And we're going to use a little bit different form of a conditional than we did with the wait until blocks. Under control, there's this wait until. There's also something called an if statement. And an if statement does what's inside it if the blank part is true. So if the sprite is touching black, then do something. If the sprite is not touching black, the statement in here does not happen and it goes on to the part below it. So let's see how this works. If sprite is touching color, change the green to black, then we would like to basically move out the way we came. So if I move down and ended up in the black, then I would like to move it up to get out of there. If I moved right and touched the black, I would like to move left to get out of there, and so on. Well, we know that we had to move 10 steps to get into the black, because we hit the down arrow, we moved 10 steps down, we started touching black. In order to get out of the black, we should actually just move back 10 steps. So I could do that either by changing my direction and moving 10 steps, or a little easier is to move negative 10 steps. So that basically counteracts the movement we had before. So here, I can move right and left. When I start to move down, which is the code that has the check for the collision, I go down, 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 and I can't actually get any closer because it's moving into the black and immediately moving out of the black, so we can't even see it. So here I'm hitting the down and I won't get any closer. This does show that maybe 10 steps is too big because we can't get that close to the walls. So I'm going to change these all to 5 steps, and that will let us have a little better control over the cat. Now I'm going to move to the right, left. I'm going to go down. Notice this time I can get really close, but I can't quite touch the walls. I'm going to take this little chunk of code and rip it off for a second and duplicate it so I can add it on to these other keys. Notice the code's the same for each part. And I also made kind of a mess here. So I'm going to move the right arrow one over here, left arrow one over here, the up one here, and the down one here. You might like to put them all in a line. I kind of like to put them where it matches their position. So this is the right arrow, this is the left arrow, this is the up arrow, this is the down arrow. And now when I go, I can go through the maze, but I cannot touch the walls. Okay, now it's time for us to get a little more organized with this potentially larger game we're making. So the first thing I have to be careful with is to make sure to start the cat off in the correct place at the start of the game, kind of like we did for the race game. So let's go back to events and get the green flag clicked event. When that green flag is clicked, we want to make sure the cat's positioned at the start of the maze, and I can decide where I want that to be. I'm going to decide to put him over here in the far right corner. If I go to the motion area, then this go to XY already has his current position in there. So I just have to position him where I want him, and then grab this block and put it there. So now if I have him in the wrong place and I hit the green flag, he gets positioned at the start. And I can then start moving around and trying to get through the maze. I want to add some kind of goal here that the cat has to reach. So let's add another sprite to the project. And if you want to, you can start drawing sprites or doing something a little more interesting. I probably want some kind of thing. There really aren't that many natural shapes or sprites to use here. Maybe I'll pick the magic carpet as a goal. That seems like a nice thing to have in a cave somewhere. That's pretty big, so let's shrink it down quite a bit. A little hard to tell what it is now, but that's all right. And I'm going to move it up here. When the green flag is clicked for the carpet, I want to just sit there and wait until the cat touches me. So that's really easy. Control, wait until, go to sensing. I'm touching. This one's always a little confusing because it's always blank at first, but that's where the different sprites hide. Till touching sprite 1. You know, at some point you're going to have a lot of sprites in your maze game, and this is probably a good time to get in the habit of changing the name. You can go, instead of calling it sprite 1, let's just call it cat. That way that you're never confused, like, oh, which one is sprite 1, which one is sprite 2, and so on. The magic carpet already has a name, so that's nice. Notice, now I have to change that to cat. Sometimes it updates itself. I'm not sure what triggers that. So wait until touching cat. When we're done touching the cat, we want to change the backdrop to a different maze, because that's going to be the next level. So under, where was that? Sometimes you have to look around for these things. There's a backdrop name. Switch backdrop. It's by the costumer. Switch backdrop to, it says backdrop 1. This is backdrop 1. I don't have another backdrop yet, so let's make one. Go to the stage. I want to paint a new backdrop. I have to do the same thing that I did before. Change this to black, fill it, get a pen, change it to white, and this one I'm going to make just like a little twisty pattern like that. Alright, so that's backdrop 2. Let's go back to backdrop 1 because that's what we were on before. Scripts, magic carpet. Alright. When the cat is touching the magic carpet, we've made it to the end of the first level. And I'm going to change this to backdrop 2. Now, each sprite can react to an event of the changing of the backdrops. So for example, when the cat gets to the end here, maybe we want to position the cat at a new place on the new backdrop. So let's see how to do that. Under events, there is a when backdrop switches to backdrop 2. We are probably going to move the cat to some new location. In this case, I guess we need to actually go back to the backdrop so we know where to put the cat. Backdrop, backdrop 2. Put the cat at the beginning of the second level. And use the go-to here and place it on when backdrop switches to backdrop 2. Now, in this case, it just happens that the end of this level is pretty close to where the end of the first level was. But we probably want some kind of new target here. So on the magic carpet, I want it to disappear when it goes to level 2. So I'm going to go to events. When backdrop switches to backdrop 2, and actually, you know, I could probably actually just put it here, but I'm going to be a little consistent and have each sprite have something that reacts to the change of the backdrop. Looks and hide. Now anytime you change the show and hide of a sprite, you have to make sure it's going to be set up correctly when you start the game over again. So I need to make sure to put a show on the green flag clicked, because at the very beginning of the game we do want the carpet to show, and then when the backdrop changes to the second level we want to hide it. The other thing we need to do is to make sure the stage switches properly to the correct backdrop. So on a green flag click, go back to that looks, we're going to switch backdrop to backdrop 1. So one thing with bigger programs is you need to always have a green flag and then do a bunch of setup, like should I be showing at the beginning of the game? What should the background be at the beginning of the game? Who should be positioned where at the beginning of the game? So it's very good to be consistent and make sure all the sprites have some kind of green flag clicked thing, and it sets them up exactly the way they should be at the beginning of the game. So let's hit the green flag and see what it does. Alright, so notice the green flag made the backdrop switch back to backdrop 1, and the cat's over here. I move through the maze, barely made that corner there. And I have to kind of wiggle my way up, and I'm here. Notice I got positioned in the right spot, and the goal for here went away. To add more levels, you should add another sprite with another goal, and have stuff that looks kind of like this. Wait until touching cat, and then switch backdrop to maybe backdrop 3. Make another level. Now I'm going to show you one more thing. And for that, we're going to have a guard sprite. We'll just do a bat. You know, that's a bad idea because the bat is black and the sides are black, and so that's going to cause us some complications. So I'm going to delete that. And we'll just have this bug. You probably get it to work, but sometimes it's better to be cautious about that kind of stuff. I have to shrink the bug way down. Alright, this is some scary guard bug, and we're on the wrong level. We want to be on level 1. Alright, so the idea of the bug is that it is going to go back and forth, and if it touches you, it's game over. So the first thing we should do is on the green flag, we want to position it somewhere. Let's have it go up nice and high like this. Motion, grab the go-to block. I now want to make it move down someplace like this. So I'm going to have a repeat forever and make it glide to this new location. We haven't really used this command. It's like a move, but instead of doing just a certain number of steps, it takes a certain amount of time going to an exact location. So I want to glide to this location here, and then I want to glide back up here. Notice the glide keeps changing the numbers for you, so we can just drag them over. 1 second is pretty fast bug. So let's do 5 seconds on each of these. So first of all, let's just see what happens. Okay, hit the green flag, and the bug is going back and forth. So this is like a guard bug. I'm going to hit stop just so we can add a little bit more. Now what I want is for when the cat touches the bug, it somehow ends the game. So somewhere I need to check for a collision. The problem is this glide, the computer stays on that instruction during that entire glide. So you can't put in like a wait until colliding kind of thing in the middle of this. It will only check that after it finishes the whole glide, or finishes this whole glide. Luckily, each sprite can do 2 things at once. So I can do another green flag clicked and a forever loop, or actually I'll do a repeat until, or wait until. I don't even need to wait until touching the cat. So that's pretty easy. It just sits there and keeps checking over and over again whether it's touching the cat. And when that happens, there's a lot of things we can do. For now, I'm just going to stop all scripts because it's the end of the game. So let's see what happens here. Green flag, it's going back and forth. I'm going to run out and we touch the bug, and that's the end of the game. If I get past the bug, no, quick, why did I do that? Here I can cheat, drag it. You can actually make sprites so they can't be dragged like this, which is probably a good idea for your own game. I come up here, and I've switched to the next level. Now, hopefully you see a problem. Our guard is still there. So we also need to add a when backdrop switches to backdrop 2, and all I have to do is hide. Once you hide, all that touching stuff doesn't work anymore. So green flag, cheat my way across the maze, touch, and the guard goes away. Now, this is really all you really need to know how to make a super complicated game. Each sprite has to have one of these backdrop switches to backdrop 1, backdrop 2, backdrop 3, and so on. When the green flag is clicked, you should position it correctly and either show it or hide it depending on how it should start off. If you want to have guard, you can do a combination of these glides and a combination of wait until touching. If you have goals, they just sit there and wait until they're touching and then switch the backdrop for you. And again, you make sure everything's hidden when the backdrop switches. One thing you can imagine doing is having something like a life score, so use a variable, and if you touch certain things, your life goes up, and if you touch other things, your life goes down. So that might be a little better than a game where you just immediately stop the game when something bad happens, because then you never get a chance to sort of try to recover or something like that. So I want you to try to build a maze game and then look at the instructions for what you should add, and I think it should be a great project that you should be proud of.